Okay, you have got to hear this story. It's about a guy who completely gained the system, whose life is so nuts it sounds like it's straight out of a comic book. But it's all true. We're going to dive into how one man proved that if your story is good enough, people will buy it, no matter what you're selling.
I mean, get this. This is a guy who literally crashed helicopters. He sank a multi-million-dollar yacht. He partied harder than any rock star you could possibly imagine. And he made his fortune convincing regular people to dump their life savings into stocks that he knew were complete and utter garbage.
And, on top of all that, he apparently did, and this is a direct quote, enough drugs to tranquilize a zoo. I mean, the sheer scale of it all is just mind-boggling.
And here's the real kicker. After all of that, after the FBI finally caught up with him and he was looking at decades in prison, he comes out the other side more famous, probably richer, and gets one of the biggest movie stars on the planet to play him in a blockbuster movie. It sounds like I'm describing a cartoon villain, right? Or some over-the-top character from a video game. But no, this was a real person, with real crimes and, real victims. And somehow, we're the ones who turned him into a legend. So how does a person like this even exist? Well, to figure that out, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning, back to his childhood in Queens, New York, where from day one, he had one single obsession: getting rich. And not just rich, rich.
And you know that talent for selling? It was there right from the start. While other kids were doing whatever, Jordan Belfort and a buddy were out on the beach selling Italian ice. And get this, by the time they were 16, they'd made $20,000 in one summer. That's not just a summer job. That's a sign of what's to come.
He did try the straight and narrow path for a second. He actually enrolled in dental school. But on the very first day, the dean told the class, hey, if you're just here to get rich, you're in the wrong place. So what does Jordan do? He stands up, walks out, and drops out right then and there. It was crystal clear this was never about a respectable career. It was only, and I mean only, about the money.
So after a door-to-door meat business he started went totally bust, he learned something really important. It wasn't about the meat or the seafood or whatever product he was pushing. The product was him. He realized he had this superpower. He could sell absolutely anything to anyone. And that skill, without a moral compass, well, that's a dangerous combination.
So naturally, he lands on Wall Street in the 80s, which, let's be honest, was basically a giant casino with fancier suits. He just loved the pure chaos and greed of it all. But just as he's getting his feet wet, the market completely tanks on Black Monday. And boom, he's fired. But then he finds it, his golden ticket, the super sketchy world of penny stocks. The companies were worthless, but the commissions, a massive 50%. So he decides, okay, I'm building my own empire. He calls it Stratton Oakmont. Sounds super prestigious, right? You're picturing old money, mahogany desks, the whole shebang. The reality? It was a chaotic office in a pretty crummy strip mall. The brand itself was the first big con. And his hiring plan was pure genius in a way. He didn't want Ivy League finance bros, no. He hired bartenders, bouncers, used car salesmen, guys who were hungry, guys who were desperate. He figured you can teach anyone to read a stock script, but you can't teach that raw, burning desire to make a sale no matter what it takes. So once he had his wolf pack all trained up, things just exploded. The money was pouring in so fast they couldn't count it. And the office, well, it turned into something out of a cartoon. It wasn't a brokerage firm anymore. It was a circus that just happened to sell stocks. No, I'm being completely serious. We're talking about strippers performing during lunch. They held dwarf tossing contests in the office. There were constant champagne showers. At one point, they supposedly filled a fire extinguisher with tequila. It was just a non-stop party fueled by millions and millions of stolen dollars. So how are they making all this money? It all came down to a simple and frankly vicious scam called the pump and dump. Here's how it worked. First, the brokers would call up unsuspecting investors, teachers, mechanics, retirees, and hype these worthless stocks. All that buying would artificially pump up the price. Then, once the stock hit its peak, Stratton would dump all of their own shares at once, making a fortune while the price crashed to zero, leaving all their clients completely wiped out. But let's be real. An empire that's built entirely on fraud and lies, it's not going to last. So while Jordan was out buying yachts and living like he was invincible, the feds were quietly starting to close in. The party was just about over. It all started quietly. A whisper here and there. And then, the wiretaps. The FBI was listening to everything. Suddenly, every single phone call was a huge risk
because odds are someone was recording it.
And then the pressure really started to build. That loyal wolf pack, it started to crumble. When you're facing that much prison time, loyalty goes out the window pretty fast. Guys started flipping, becoming informants. The whole foundation of trust that held the place together just disintegrated.
And then one morning, that was it. Game over. Federal agents swarmed the Stratton Oakmont offices, kicking down doors, grabbing files, computers, everything. And in an instant, the entire empire was just gone.
So you'd think, okay, this is it. He's done for. Belfort was staring down the barrel of 30 years in federal prison. A life sentence, basically. But he did what he's always done. He sold a story. He cut a deal. He cooperated. He gave up everybody. And his sentence for ruining all those lives? A measly 22 months in a cushy, minimum security prison.
And this, right here, is where the story takes its wildest turn. For almost any other criminal, getting sent to prison is the end of the line. For Jordan Belfort, it was just the start of his next chapter, turning his crime spree into a massively profitable global brand. Check out how he pulled this off. While he's in prison, he writes a tell-all book. And it's not an apology, it's basically a greatest hits album of all his craziest moments. Of course, Hollywood eats it up and makes it into a huge movie. And just like that, the scammer becomes a pop culture hero. And today, he's a motivational speaker traveling the world teaching people his sales techniques. And maybe that's the real punchline to this whole crazy story. It's not about whether crime pays. It's that, a lot of the time, the world doesn't really care about the truth or what's right. It rewards whoever tells the most exciting, most compelling story. And let's face it, nobody told a better story than the Wolf of Wall Street.
But here's the final thought I want to leave you with. We're the ones who bought the book. We're the ones who watched the movie and cheered. We turned a guy who destroyed countless lives into a kind of folk hero. So the real question isn't just about him, it's about us. What does our obsession with a story like this really say about the things we secretly admire?